To some of the younger generation, the horrors of war are long gone, but the debate over justice, redemption and responsibility for the atrocities are still with us. When I interviewed Ralph Cossa, president of the Pacific Forum of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, our focus of conversation shifted from what Shinzo Abe hopes to achieve on his trip to the US to eventually who is to blame for nationalist sentiments among Chinese people.
Well, I expect that they'll have a very cordial visit. They've already met once, of course, after President Trump was first elected, and they seem to have hit it off very well. I think the two personalities have a lot in common, and there's been a lot of preparation for the trip. So I would expect it'll be a fairly cordial event.
Why do you think the Japanese Prime Minister is so eager to meet US President Donald Trump? I mean, this is already the second time in a very short period of time. Why? What does Japan want to achieve by doing that?
Well, first of all, it's very important. The alliance is very important to Japan's security. If Secretary Clinton had won the election, Abe would still wanted to have been the first Asian leader to come to Washington to meet with her. They attach a lot of importance to who comes from Asia first. So I think Mr. Abe sees that as an important symbol of the strength of the alliance and of the importance of Japan by being the first Asian visitor to come to Washington. And there's been a lot of anxiety about Mr. Trump. He's been an unusual candidate, an unusual president-elect, and somewhat of an unusual president in the first couple of weeks. So that creates anxiety in Japan, and I think Mr. Abe is here to try to relieve that anxiety and learn firsthand about Mr. Trump's views of the alliance and the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about this meeting's potential implications on China. Now, Japan has, or the Japanese leadership has been viewing China as its biggest threat, and the United States obviously is also worried about China's rise. What should China be watching for in this Trump-Abe meeting?
Well, I don't think China will be a central player in this, but certainly there'll be things that will affect China. You know, the Japanese need reassurance. They need reassurance because they face some threats. They perceive a very immediate nuclear threat from North Korea, and the U.S. will reinforce our commitment to Japan there. They also worry about some of what they perceive to be very aggressive actions by China in the East China Sea. I think that the U.S.-Japan alliance is a factor for stability in East Asia, not tension. I think the Japanese have already said that they don't plan on getting involved in the South China Sea activities. They're certainly haven't been asked and haven't indicated a desire to conduct freedom of navigation operations. They have been involved in helping navies in Southeast Asia to build their capacity to, defend their own territory. And that, to me, is a stabilizing factor. So I don't see the U.S.-Japan alliance as directly threatening Chinese activity.
I'm sorry,
in the South
I
China
cannot
Sea.
agree with you on that, Mr. Cossa. Who do you think Japan holds in their eyes as their arch rival in the region? It is China. Everything Japan is doing in terms of security in the East Asian region is against China, unfortunately.
I think Japan sees China as a potential threat. I also see that Japan wants to cooperate with China. As I understand it, there are 10 million Chinese who are working in Japanese factories in China today. There are billions of dollars of Japanese investment that have helped the Chinese economic miracle. And China needs that Japanese investment and needs that economic cooperation with China. So if Japan thought that China was inevitably an enemy, it wouldn't have invested billions of dollars, trillions of yen in the Chinese economy.
I don't think that Japan in general views China as the arch enemy. Maybe I didn't put it accurately enough. I think the Abe government is doing that.
I think the Abe government is nervous about China, and I think, quite frankly, if I can be very blunt with you, I think both Mr. Abe and President Xi see some value in playing up the other one as a potential threat. This helps to drive nationalism in Japan just as it drives nationalism in China. But at the end of the day, neither President Xi nor Prime Minister Abe want to have fight with one another because their economies are very interdependent. So I think that each one sees a challenge from the other, but each one also sees the importance of ultimately cooperating with one another.
Well, you talked about the rise of nationalism in China. Indeed, there were some nationalistic behavior which were harmful to the Chinese people themselves, but I don't think the Chinese wanted this kind of nationalist feelings. They were, for instance, very angry over Japan's denial of what happened during the Second World War. And so long as the Japanese government refuses to acknowledge what they have done, not just to the people of China, but also in people in other Asian countries, in South Korea, even in the Pacific. The nationalist feelings in China among the Chinese public will not go down, and this is a very important factor in the relationship between Japan and China. And I would say a big blame, the biggest blame, lies in the Japanese side. So long as they cannot face up to their history during the Second World War, there will always be this great resentment among the Chinese public towards that country and towards that government.
Well, I understand the Chinese resentment, and I understand the Chinese anger, but I disagree with you 100% when you say that the Japanese have never apologized. The Japanese have apologized. They've gone to China to apologize. They've gone to the United States. They've given apology statements. And the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the war, they again expressed their great remorse and sorrow for what had happened. The Japanese don't deny what happened during the Second World War. If you go onto any website in Japan and Google the Second World War, you'll find all sorts of acknowledgments of Japanese atrocities. Japanese, I think, foolishly argue, was it 300,000 people killed in Nanjing, or was it only 80,000? But this is arguing, numbers. It isn't arguing the fact that these things happened. Mr. Abe himself has given some very sincere statements of apology. Now, you can say that they're insincere, you can choose not to believe them, but you can't say that he didn't say it, because there's evidence. There's been 19, 20, 21 direct apologies from Japanese foreign prime ministers, including from Prime Minister Abe over the last 40 years. So maybe our Chinese colleagues are not getting exposed to those, or not reading them, or not believing them. But the apologies have clearly been there, and I think we need to at least acknowledge that.
There are all kinds of ways to phrase your apologies. You can say, I sincerely apologize, or you can show the kind of remorse as the German leaders did after the Second World War. Or you can say, I'm sorry, I did that, but I did that. And the number is not, as you said, 300,000. Right. It's just is much smaller. And by the way, if you change your textbook, what you're teaching to the younger generation, and saying, okay, something happened in Nanjing back then, but not so bad, okay? And you put it in the footnote instead of saying quite some number of people have been killed. These are the kind of, and continuingly they are doing the same thing. And it is not just the people in China who are not satisfied with the people from South Korea, I'm sorry, have also been very angry with the Japanese way of trying to whitewash what they did during Second World War. The fact that, these new statues have been erected exactly is a reflection of the South Korean people's resentment to the Japanese denial of what they did in the issue of comfort women. But I think we're going a bit off topic today, and we have been talking about Trump's meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. We'll come back to the discussion about Second World War in the next time, maybe. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Cossa, joining us from Honolulu. He is president of the Pacific Forum of the Center of Strategic and International Studies. I appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. Look forward to talking to you about World War II anytime.